Hello, this is Abebe from University of Gondar Faculty of Informatics, and then this is our second Fundamentals of Programming with C++ tutorial. On our previous tutorial, we have seen about the basic structure of C++ program and then how we can write a C++ program with the help of code block IDE and GCC as a compiler. And then this was our first program that will display the word welcome and welcome again on the screen. In this second tutorial, we are going to see about the different statements that we are going to use when we create a program. So basically in C++ there are 5 types of statements. So basically C++ statements are the building block of a C++ program. So let's have a look at what are those statements, and then we can go back to the practical part on how we can write those statements. So basically there are 5 statements in C++. There are 5 statements in C++. The first one is what we call it declaration statement. So this is a way of telling the compiler that what kind of variable is going to store what kind of data. For example, if we want to add 2 numbers, we have to first declare the 2 numbers, for example num1 and num2, and then the sum, we have to declare the sum variable. So before we use any variable in C++, we have to declare it. We have to tell the compiler that this variable is going to store this kind of data. So for example, if you want to declare 2 variables to store integer numbers, for example int num1, so this is a declaration. So basically in C++ you have to follow the declaration rules. The rule is, the syntax is start with the data type. Int is the data type, so basically the data type will tell the compiler what kind of data this variable is going to store, and then followed to the data type you have to use the variable name, and then finally we have to end with a semicolon. So this is how we can declare a variable in C++. If you have another variable declaration in a new line, we can do it like this: int num2, like this. So this is how we declare variable in C++. But we do have these 2 variables with the same data type, so we can do it this way: int num1 comma num2. So if 2 or more variables share the same data type, this one is the recommended one, since it will minimize the number of code in our program. So declaration is nothing but telling the compiler that this variable is going to store this kind of data. Okay, so this is the first C++ statement. So basically variable naming has its own rule. So basically the variable name should start with a number or underscore. C++ keyword is not allowed to use as a variable name, and then usually the variable name should be meaningful. Okay, so the other one is the initialization statement. So it's nothing but just giving the initial value to the variable. For example, if we want to assign some value to the number 1, we can use num1 equals to 0. So we just declare a variable in this statement, but we don't know what's the value of num1 initially. So we can initialize the variable num1 by providing 0. So this is the single equal sign is the initialization or the assignment operator. The third type of statement is what we call it the output statement. Or let's say about first the expression statement. So this is nothing but the arithmetic operations that we do in our program. So for example, if we want to add the 2 numbers, we can use sum equals to num1 plus num2. So this is what we call it an expression. So an expression is nothing but a mathematical or a numerical operation that we are going to perform in our program. So the other thing is about the fourth statement is the cout statement or the output statement. So this is a way to let the C++ program, the C++ compiler, to display output to the user, and then to display output to the user we are going to use the cout function to display output to the user. And then the fifth one is about the input statement. Input statement. Okay, this is the input statement that will help the user to input the input data into the program. So to use the input statement, we are going to use the scene predefined function. So these are the mandatory, these are the basic building block of every C++ program. So depending on the kind of program that we are going to write, depending on the kind of problem that we are going to solve, we will use the declaration, initialization, expression, input and output statements. One basic important that you should know is every C++ statement must end with a semicolon or a semicolon. Otherwise, you will get a syntax error. So after you write this declaration, initialization, expression, output, or input statement, you have to make sure that you end that statement with a semicolon. Otherwise, you'll get a syntax error. You'll get a problem. Okay. So let's see how we can just convert, for example, a flowchart into a program. So let me show you this one. For example, in here, so this is a flowchart that will display, that will add two numbers. So this is the starting and ending of the program, and then this is what we call it the declaration. So this is how we declare. So this is how we just convert into a program. So this is the flowchart, and then this is how you convert it into the program. And then this is the initialization statement, and then this is the input statement, and then this one is the expression, and then this one is the output statement. So after you just do the flowchart, you can convert the flowchart into a program like this, because these all are statements. Okay, so let's see a program that will display the sum of two numbers. So having this flowchart, we can write a program to convert this flowchart into a program. So let's go to so let's open our code block. Let's open a new file, and then let's save this as sum.cpp. Okay, so we are going to write a program as usual. First we have to do the structure, hash include stream using namespace std to use a standard C++, the main function, and then the block, and then finally end of the program return 0. So we said that we are going to write the C++ program to display the sum of two numbers. So we have to start with the declaration, initialization, input, output, and then the expression. So before we write any C++ program, before we just go to the program, first you have to identify what are those parameters, what are those variables that we are going to use in our program. So to add two numbers, we need two numbers as an input, and then we need another variable to store the output. So let's have the declaration int num1 to input the first num1, num2 to store the second number, and then finally sum to store the sum of the two numbers. So this is the declaration statement. Okay, the declaration statement. So we are just telling the compiler that num1, num2, and sum are the variable to store integer value in my program. The second one is initialization. Currently, we didn't add any number for the variable sum, so initially the value of sum is 0. Okay, so the third statement is the input. Once we declare and initialize the variable, the third statement is the input. So let's say input. To input the value of the variable, we are going to use the same predefined function, because it's possible to use sim because we include diastream.h in our program. So in num1, the end of the statement, and we have to end with a semicolon. And then second one is we have to input num2, sorry, in num2, declaration, initialization, input. So after we just receive the value of num1 and num2, the next very much important point is an expression. We are going to assign the value of num1 plus num2 to the variable sum. So this is an expression, meaning telling the compiler to add the value of num1 and num2 and then assign to the variable sum. And then finally, after the expression, we can display output to the user. Display cout sum. End of the statement. So this is what we call it the 5 statements in C++. The declaration, initialization, input, expression, and the output statement. As you see here, every statement must end with a semicolon, otherwise you will get an error. Let's see, as usual, first we have to check whether our program is error free or not by building it. 0 warning, 0 error, and then we'll run the program. So when we run the program, have a look, we got the black screen with a blinking of the cursor. So blinking means there is an input expected. We are expected to provide the input. It's not descriptive. Later on the class, we will see how we can make this program interactive, descriptive for the user. So instead of just blinking, we can tell the user to input the value of num1. So blinking means input, for example 5, enter. If there is another blinking, another input is expected, 6. So usually 5 is the value of num1, 6 is the value of num2, and then enter. See, 11 is the output. So we just provide 5 for the value of num1, 6 for the value of num2. So based on this input, our program add num1, num2, and then assign to sum, and then finally display the value of sum as 11. But this is not as such descriptive for the user. We don't know, for example, a new user, a new student will not be able to understand what is the value of, what's 5 mean, what's 6 mean, what's 11 means, what kind of program is it. So just to make our program descriptive, we can add the cout statements. So before we input, we can display some output to the user. For example, cout in quotation, for example, enter num1. As we discussed on the class, everything that you put in quotation will be displayed as an output. Let's see, compile and then run. Have a look now. Since we had an output statement before inputting the value of num1, this message will appear. So this is what descriptive, meaning when we add a number, we know that this number is a value of num1. So this is a kind of making the program readable for the user. Enter, since we didn't add the output statement for num2, enter num2 will not be appear on the screen, so we'll provide the value. This is the output. So let's add all output for all variables. Cout enter num2. Okay, and then finally, after we just add the value, instead of simply displaying the value of sum, we can say sum equals. So this way we can make our program somewhat readable for the user. I will look now. Start, run, see, enter num1 will appear, so we are going to provide the value of num1. Enter num2 will appear, so we are going to provide the value of num2. So finally, as a sum, we will get 14. Sum equals to 40. So usually the output statement will make your program readable. So depending on the kind of problem that we are going to solve, depending of the kind of program that you are going to write, we can have the declaration, initialization, input, output, and expression statement, but it's not mandatory to include all these programs together. For example, on our previous tutorial, we have seen that we just use only output statement, but when you come to this one, we just use all of these 5 statements: initialization, declaration, input, output, and expression. So one thing that you should understand is it's not a must to include all and some in a program. So that will depending on the kind of program that you are going to write. But one thing that you should keep in mind is that from these 5 statements, output statement is a must for all C++ program, because we said that a program, as a program, it should solve a problem. It should display one output to the user. To display that output, we have to use the cout statement. So from this given 5 statement, 4 of them are optional, but output statement is a must. And then the other important point is, after the statement, every statement must end with a semicolon. After you write a statement in C++, you have to terminate with a semicolon. Okay, so this is how we just write statement in C++. Thank you very much. So in the next tutorial, we'll see about the conditional statements. Bye.